Studying digital media arts, and this presentation is about my summer. I spent a summer in Hollywood working on Showtime's Weeds. So just to give you...
Yeah, I can't hear you.
Speak louder?
Sorry.
Okay. All right, well, just to give you a really quick idea of what the internship was, really brief overview. I served as a camera production assistant on Showtime's Weeds at NBCUniversal in Los Angeles, California. Now, what my duties were as a camera PA were primarily running fiber optic cables, swapping batteries, and cleaning stuff, getting coffee, all the standard grunt work that you would do at the bottom of the chain. But eventually, I upgraded over time to being able to handle the lenses, slating, which is when you put the clapboard in front of the camera and then run away. And then it's not really operating what I did, but I was behind the camera for a shot. It was cool. And the lenses is kind of a big deal because you're talking about a dozen lenses worth about $15,000 a piece. And you're just kind of running them back and forth from the camera to the box. So you got to be careful with them, and if you drop it, not good. But we had no losses. That was good. Now, as far as getting the actual internship, the first person I have to thank is Nathan Wagner. First, for providing me with enough education and experience to be able to handle an internship like this, but additionally, because he introduced me to Mike Trim, who for 5 years was the director of photography of Weeds, and he has, for this past season, he has moved on to directing Weeds and directing Parks and Recreation, and another show called Man Up, which I believe is coming out in January. And then additionally, Ethan Phillips, who is the DIT on Weeds, and I'll get more into what the DIT means and what that position is. But he was my on-set supervisor because Trim wasn't on set all the time and he was quite busy. So Ethan was the guy who I went to, who I talked to about stuff. I could ask him whatever I wanted, and he was willing to help me out in any way that he could. And then lastly is Seal Hanrahan, and she is a longtime family friend who happens to live in Los Angeles, right outside of Santa Monica. And she had this nice little 2-bedroom apartment, and she allowed me to live there for the 3.5 months, which was a big help. So as far as getting to the internship, from here on out, it's mostly a visual story. So getting to the internship, my dad and I loaded up my car in early May, and it was literally loaded to the brim. We did not have any space at all. So I packed up my entire life and moved it cross country. And this is the route that we took. So you can see we went through Ohio and Indiana and Illinois and Missouri and Oklahoma. It's the worst route you can possibly take to go cross country. It is the most boring route once you hit Missouri. But if you're going for time, which is exactly what we needed to do, I needed to get out there as fast as possible. This is the route that you take. But otherwise, if you have the option, don't do it. But I mean, even though it was pretty boring, there were a couple of cool stops along the way. But they were all by chance. We had no plans except to get to LA as fast as possible. So we stopped. I forget where this is. I want to say Texas. I'm not quite certain, but we had a hotel that was right behind, it was probably 400 feet behind this gas station. And this gas station, my dad went out for a run, and he found this place. And he stopped by, and it turns out that this is actually, it's a gas station converted into a gift shop, and this gas station was the gas station that's modeled in Pixar's Cars. And if I was taking a picture from down there, you could see the resemblance a lot better, but that was a really cool thing. We just happened to find it. It just was right there, and then we definitely made sure to fill up at 34 cents a gallon. This is another really awesome place. For those who know me, I'm a bit of a car fanatic. We just needed a pit stop. We just needed to go to the bathroom. And so we go into this place, and there's a classic Ford. I forget exactly which kind, but it was a classic Ford out in the lobby. And I start looking at it. I'm looking over it, and then I bring my head up, and there's this window into this back room, and there's tons of cars and memorabilia. So it turned out to be this awesome little car museum in the back of this rest stop area. So we spent a few minutes looking around, some really nice stuff in there. But most of the time, this is what we saw for 10, 11 hours a day. This was about it. And then 5 days later, we eventually landed in Los Angeles, and that's the apartment that I stayed in on the top floor there. That's my dad on the right, and then Seal walking towards us, so literally seconds after we arrived. And then that was on a Wednesday we arrived. And then Friday, my dad and I went into Universal because I had to take care of paperwork and I wanted to kind of get an idea of where I'll be working and introduce myself, that kind of deal. So we stopped by the lot, and then while we were there, I got a nice little personal tour from Mr. Trim. He drove us around in a golf cart all across the lot. So we got to see, in this instance, the Seuss set. There was also another set, I believe, for some Spielberg film. I forget which one it is. But there's a lot of sets that are just still there because they have running tours throughout the year at Universal. But Trim gave us ours. And then there's my ID badge. If you couldn't tell, I was a little excited to be there. So now, as far as being on set, I'm just going to kind of give you guys an overview of what it's like kind of like a day-by-day thing. So the first thing to know is that every day is different. So it's really hard to give you an actual, this is what I did every day. Like this is the motions. So it's kind of like a basic idea. Things vary a little bit, but for the most part, most of the stuff stays consistent every day. What I would do is I would wake up 2 hours before call, or 3 hours if we were on location, which meant on Mondays. Mondays you were always called at 7 a.m. or 6:30 or 6 a.m., which meant that I was waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning every Monday. And there were other people who had way worse commutes than I had. I actually got off pretty easy at like a 20-minute commute on a good day. Some people were coming from an hour or more away, even on a good day. So I can't imagine how, what time these people were waking up to get to their job. But that's what it was for me. I would then arrive at the Basecamp, Basecamp is kind of where all the production, on-set production offices, that kind of deal. That's where they're all held. We'd have a catered breakfast. And then from there, after breakfast, we would start moving camera equipment. All the camera carts, the DIC cart, Video Village, audio carts, everything. If it was on the truck, it had to be offloaded and then moved to where it needed to be set up. And then from there, after everything was set up, I would start to, we would get the cameras mounted to the dollies so that they could be moved around to their position. And then I would start running fiber cables and power cables to make sure that we were all connected and up and running. And then after all this is set, that's when the waiting starts. We would wait, wow. We would wait around, that's a fun one, for the private rehearsal, which consists of the actors and the director and maybe a couple of producers just watching the actors rehearse. And the actors, I believe I was told on this show at least, they don't actually rehearse until they need to do the scene, until we're shooting. So the actors know their lines, but they know them separately, and then they all come together during a private rehearsal to get everything moving. And then after the private rehearsal, everybody comes in and we watch a marking rehearsal, which is where all of the actors, again, go through the motions of the scene, but then you lay down tape marks on the floor so that you know where they're going to land. And then after that, we start to move all the equipment in, and that's called lighting mode. And so that's when the gaffer's telling his guys, set up the lights and set up flags, and then move the DP's telling the guys, move the cameras here and here. And after we get through lighting mode, then we shoot, and then rinse and repeat. So we go through, when we move to a next scene, we go through a private rehearsal, we go through a marking rehearsal, go through a lighting mode, and then we shoot. And so most days, it depends on the length of the scenes. Most days we would probably get through, I want to say 3 scenes, 4 scenes, maybe more, maybe less, depends on the scripts, depends upon the assistant directors, what they've scheduled, that kind of stuff. And in the end, this show is, admittedly, Weeds is a bit more intense than most other shows. Weeds, 12 hours a day is really good and unheard of for Weeds. I think we had one day where we worked 12 or 12 and a half hours. Otherwise, you're working an average of 13, 14 hours a day. Fridays tended to be 15 to 17 hours a day. So you wouldn't get home until 3 or 4 in the morning, Saturday morning. After a Friday work day. And so in the end, this usually resulted to an average of about 70 hours a week. And I was there for all of it. I wanted to be on set. I wanted to be around these guys and around what's going on. And I wanted to show these guys, I'm here to work with you guys. I'm here all the way. So I was also there working 70 hours a week. And then here we go, back to the visual story. So this is stage 27. at NBCUniversal. And stage 27 was our home. It was our main stage, and it was where Basecamp was held. So Basecamp is right behind the image. These are our other two stages that we had. We had stages 18 and 19. So we would alternate between these different stages. So if one set happened to be built on one stage, and then another set would be built on another, and we had to shoot in both sets that same day, we would have to do a company move where we would tear everything down, move it to the next stage, and reset everything up. And it could, some days could make for really long days if you had 2 company moves. Sometimes I think we even had 3 company moves one time. So I think we hit every stage one day. And that's just ridiculous because you're talking about at least half an hour, 45 minutes just to get everybody moved and torn down, moved, and set back up. So it really adds to a long day. This is our breakfast. Omelet bar every morning, sausage every morning, bacon every morning. It was just ridiculous the amount of food. And this is technically breakfast. This is when we were called at 1 p.m. That's when we started at 1 p.m. And then we worked until 3 in the morning that day. So our lunch consisted of burgers instead. More food, kind of your colder foods. You got oatmeal, more breakfast-oriented stuff. We would get awesome treats, usually on Fridays, sometimes other days during the week. This is just one of the many. This is like a gourmet ice cream sandwich kind of deal. This was the inside of our camera truck. Everything, all of the video equipment and all of the audio equipment fit inside this truck. So when we had to move on location, this place was packed. You're talking about, I believe, 7 different carts, maybe 8 different carts fit into here. There's a good couple of feet behind the image, but yeah, everything fit into here, and this is where we stored all of our stuff that we needed. So I would have to run out, if we were doing like a battery swap, the batteries were stored on the truck, and I'd have to grab a battery, which are 20, 30-pound lead acid batteries, and run that out to the truck and run back a new one. And that was actually most of my job was running batteries. This is us moving carts on location. So this is nice and early in the morning. I think this is probably 8 a.m., something like that. And this is at a Disney ranch. I forget the exact name, but it's a really popular place to film. It's hundreds of acres with different kinds of sets. So it's really it's well used and well known in the industry to be shooting here. So this is where we did our woods shooting. And then that's us, that's the camera rigs. We're shooting on location downtown in LA. And that was mostly an outdoor shoot until later in the day, and then we moved inside. This is the DIT, or the digital imaging technician. And so who you see here, that's actually he was our second DIT. The first DIT had to leave for another show, and I'll show you him later. His name was Ethan. So this is Adam, and Adam moved into being the DIT position. He actually bumped up from DIT utility, which is the person who does the grunt work for the DIT, to the actual DIT, which was a pretty impressive career move. But we'll see if he wants to pursue that. It was kind of like Ethan had to leave on really short notice, so he just kind of needed somebody who he trusted to take over. But you can see here at the DIT, you've got 2 screens, A camera and B camera, or if there's one camera, you can set them both to the same camera. Just racks of equipment, all color control equipment, and well, that's what the DIT does. The DIT controls the color before it gets recorded to tape. So he does about 80% of the color control on set, and then the footage goes later to somebody else in post-production. They're called a colorist, and the colorist takes care of all the remaining work in color correction in post-production. But that's what the DIT does, and he makes sure that all the footage is being recorded properly. These are the 2 tape decks over here. So that fiber cable that I told you I was running, those run from these 2 decks here directly into the cameras. And then that's how we would record. And then you can kind of see sort of the controls there on the right side, and that controls all the camera controls, all the color controls, scopes and other equipment. And then Video Village is where that's where the director and all the producers sit. So while we're filming, they're behind these monitors watching the action, and then the director will use that to make notes and talk to the actors about stuff. So that is, those are the 2 main carts that I would handle. And then here is us in lighting mode, and you can see this is what I was talking about, where everything comes together in lighting mode. So you've got an electrician and a grip back there working on a light. This is one of our camera operators, Carl. So cameras are getting into position and stuff like that. And this is me slating. I was introduced to slating rather rapidly, and by rapidly I mean it is the second thing that I did within an hour of being on set, which scared the hell out of me, because it was my first day on set, and like I said, I'd been there for only an hour. I barely knew any of these people. I knew 2 names, and the second assistant camera needed to go to the bathroom, and so he basically gave me a 30-second preview or a 30-second lesson on how to slate, and then said, have at it. And the next thing I know, I'm up in front of that camera holding the slate, and then I just kind of worked my way into it. It was definitely nerve-wracking for me, but I became much more comfortable with it later on. And this is our first assistant camera, Max. And then it's me doing some playing around the cameras, operating a little bit. I did get to actually wear a Steadicam rig, which is horrendous. Those things weigh, actually I don't even know how much they weigh. I don't want to know how much they weigh. And what happened, the worst part is that the operator is a little shorter than I am, so that brace around the stomach is basically just going into my diaphragm. And I could only wear it for about 3 minutes because I was about to pass out otherwise. I just couldn't breathe in that thing. But it was cool being able to strap one of those on. And the fact that he trusted me, because that rig in particular is worth about $110,000. It's ridiculous how much they cost. Oh, and here is actually, this is me operating. It's a lock-off shot, so it's me just calling or hitting the record button and saying set. But this is the operator recording.
Is Andy even taking the brakes off?
Rolling.
Andy, big set when you're ready.
Set.
Svetlana, not your bike, not your business. This is the front row. There we go.
So that was a nice little cool behind the scenes there. This is actually my own set dressing. I became friends with the on-set set dresser, and she was not as tall as I was, and this is a rather large board, so she asked me if I would like to write on the board. So that's my handwriting, and you can see it. If you watch Weeds, you can see it in the back of the scene. So I just tried to kind of leave my mark wherever I could without getting in trouble. This is how we did subway scenes. We just had a cut-off subway cart. We had a nice big green screen in the back, and we lit that up, and that's how we recorded that. This is a shot from the catwalk, which is, I want to say 4 stories up from the floor. It's really high, and this doesn't really do it justice to show you how big these sound stages are, but this is one sound stage. I am not quite on the one end. I'm a little in on the stage, and then way back there, we're talking. There's probably 3 or 4 different sets that you can't quite see, and then you can. These are the lights that are lighting. They're acting as sunlight, and then there's also a backdrop that can be pulled out, like the New York City backdrop. Because this season, if you don't know, Weeds was always set in California. And then for this season, they moved it to New York. So we had to deal with New York backdrops and stuff like that. Nice little. Hollywood happens to practice sustainability. I've stumbled across this. I was just walking past. This is a wall. This is like an 8-foot wall, but I noticed this, and this particular wall happened to be used for both the show The Middle and How I Met Your Mother. So I thought that was kind of interesting. This is us on location inside of some, I think it was like a defunct bank, I believe, filming a scene there. And on location, this is actually the parking garage that we would all park in. And then we use this as a location to shoot in for other parking garage scenes. And some of the dangers of on location. Personally, I'm more worried about the rain than the snakes, considering the kind of equipment that we were dealing with. But This is when we were out in the woods. We found a nice snake. Some of our guest stars. That was a cool day. I basically just spent most of my day looking at the cars instead of working. And there's a lot of napping, and 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 a lot of napping. It happens. Now, because we were at NBCUniversal, there was Universal Studios right back behind us. So with our employee badges, we could just kind of pass through the security gate and hop on some rides. So sometimes during our lunch breaks, if we had enough time, a couple of us would go up, and so we got to ride on. That's the Jurassic Park ride there, and got the Mummy down here. These three guys. This is our A camera team. That's our A camera first assistant, second assistant, and camera operator. And then random girls in the back. This was my favorite shooting day, by far. This was, I believe, our second I think it was our second to last episode, and we shot all day. That was the 1 p.m. call that I told you guys about. So we worked from 1 p.m. until 3 a.m. And I have never had so much fun in my entire life. I've never worked so hard. I sat for about 45 minutes over the course of that entire day. Most of that was spent over dinner, and I think I had like a 5-minute break every now and then here and there. But we shot on the street, we shot on sidewalks, and then we eventually moved into this back alley. And apparently this is a really well-known back alley in the industry. I didn't know this. I was informed by one of the first ACs. But apparently a lot of productions utilize this particular back alley. And this was our last day on location. So this is something like 8 or 9 in the morning. Nice and foggy, but it cleared up in about 45 minutes. Yeah. So these are some photos of the Weeds family. These are the people who I really got to know, really got to talk to and work with. Here is Ethan and Jay. So Ethan was my on-set supervisor, and then Jay is his utility. And I basically shared Jay's responsibilities. So I was working as essentially a DIT utility, or a camera utility, whatever you want to call it. Jay has been working with Ethan on Weeds for I think 4 or maybe 5 years, and she actually ended up becoming the DIT over at Parks and Recreation. And at least half of this camera crew works also on Parks and Recreation, if you're familiar with that. And then over on the right is Max, Dustin, and Adam. Max is a first AC, and then Dustin and Adam are the 2 second ACs. So I got to work closely with Dustin and Adam, and that's where like swapping lenses and slating and those responsibilities came in. So I was sharing responsibilities with different members on the team, and it was a really great learning experience. This is Mike and me in front of the New York backdrop. Mike came in to replace Dustin as a second AC because Dustin had to leave for Parks and Recreation. And then Adam and George. Adam and George are the 2 guys who I became closest with while I was out there. The 2 of them worked as the 2 past interns on Weeds these past 2 years. So they knew where I was coming from. They knew what I had to deal with, and they were really cool about it. Really nice guys. And then Adam moved up, like I said, Adam moved up into the DIT position, and then George actually moved into the DIT utility position. So the 3 of us worked really closely together. We had a good time. This is Sean and Taj. Sean is the B camera first assistant, and then Taj is the A camera operator. And then there's Carl over there, and Carl is the other operator. He's the B camera operator. This is Steve, our DP, turning 112. Or 65 or something like that. Really great guy. Lots of energy, and he actually was the A camera operator, I believe, from 2nd season until the 6th season, and then this season he moved full-time into director of photography. He had actually taken over for Trim in previous seasons. When Trim was directing episodes, Steve would take over as DP. And so he finally bumped up to full-time. And then that's Christy. She is Mary Louise Parker's stand-in. And I got to chat with her a lot. She was really cool. Adam and Kendall, again, just kind of chilling out on the set, waiting for stuff to happen. And Jordan, who was the on-set photographer. And he actually didn't work for Weeds. He worked for Showtime, but he was on Weeds, I think, twice a week or something like that. And being a photographer, he and I clicked pretty quickly. He also happened to be into cars, so we had a lot to talk about, and he was just a really cool guy. And here's the Weeds production family. A lot of people are either missing or they've already moved on to other shows because this photo was taken later in the season. And what happens is that it's pretty common. People who work, what you should do in this industry is you should work one network TV show and you should work one cable TV show, because network and cable film at 2 different times during the year. Network TV films for about 7 to 8 months, cable TV films for about 3 months. And so if you do it right, you could potentially be working almost round the clock all year long. And so what happened is that Weeds started later than usual. And since Weeds is a cable show, it only films for about 3 months out of the year. So what happens is that if you have scheduling conflicts with your cable and your TV show, you choose your cable and your network show, you choose your network show because that's your bread and butter. You're working 7 to 8 out of the months because of that show, and you don't want to lose that job. And so this photo, because it was taken so much later into the season, a lot of the crew have already moved on to their network show by this time. But I mean, even the people who they brought in, still really cool people, just a really great family. A lot of people had already worked there on the season before, on the show before, so they knew everybody. Really great. And so there is me in the back there, and then Trim up front there. So as far as other things to do in my free time, when I wasn't busy working 70 hours a week, which to do other stuff was rare. Well, first thing is I lived about 3 miles from the beach. I lived right on the outskirts of Santa Monica, and so it was basically a 3-mile drive or short walk to the beach. This is me on my 21st birthday. I managed to get home early. That day, production was ended early. Friends who were working out of NBCUniversal in Los Angeles, and so he got me in contact with them. I got to meet up with them and go out with them and hang out, and really cool people. So it was just another kind of cool alumni story. Additionally, I got to have a helicopter ride. The helicopter pilot is the A-camera operator on Parks and Recreation. So like I said, most of the crew from Weeds works on Parks and Rec. These guys from Weeds, who I knew, Dustin and Adam, they are friends with the pilot and the operator. So they got me up in the air for an hour, and I had a great time. And really, really cool views. And then we also got to stop by Six Flags. Yeah, lovely photo, I know. One of the grips, I became friends with one of the grips, and he invited me out to Six Flags. So this is a bunch of people from the crew. We had a great time and got to meet the dynamic duo. And then when my family visited, my mom her best friend lives in Sacramento. So we all went up to Sacramento for a couple of days. And we did a day trip down to San Francisco for the 4th of July. So we got to see the fireworks over the bay and whatnot, and that was really cool. We had a late night sushi run. This is actually kind of a funny story. Adam, the DIT utility who bumped up to DIT, he came in late one day, which is really, really bad to do. And we all covered him, so it wasn't like the production, nothing really happened production-wise, but all the guys never stopped giving him crap for it. So what happened is they all told him, you have to take us out to Sushi to make up for what you did. So we wrapped up at about 9:45, 10 p.m. on a Wednesday night, and we had all been scoping out some sushi place for the past hour. And we found this place, and so we cleaned up as fast as possible, and we all gunned it to this place because they closed at 11. And I show up a couple minutes later than the other guys who had already ordered. We ended up ordering $300 worth of sushi. That's the kind of payback that you get if you're late, apart from possibly being fired. But if you don't get fired, then you get lucky and you get off with just a $300 bill. But that was a good time. Oops. And then we stopped by. This is also another night after production. This is like a Friday night. We got off early enough to kind of have a nightlife. And we just, or Universal also has City Walk, which is a major tourist attraction. It's like connected to their hotels and whatnot, because Universal Studios is just huge. And so we got to stop up at City Walk, and it was okay. I also got to go on 2 different tours at Paramount. And the second time I got to meet a couple of members of the cast of Community, which is one of my all-time favorite shows. Now, this story is kind of also fun. I know the guy who runs the Page program at Paramount. And so the Page is the people who like give tours, and they're kind of starting at the bottom line, learning the industry, working their way up. And so I had already taken 1 tour with them at Paramount, and then I got in a second tour right before I left. And the tour guide who I got happened to be the same tour guide that I had previously. So we already had a rapport, I knew her, we were just kind of chatting about stuff. And the Community set is the most open set on Paramount's lot. So you can always go in and check out what's going on set. And when we walked on the set, Donald Glover happened to be sitting right there. But the issue is that Paramount is, when you're on tour, they're like, you can't, get all crazy on them. You can't freak out or whatever. So you just kind of treat them, this is their workspace. This is essentially their second home. So just kind of be respectful, be quiet. So when we passed through, I couldn't really do anything. But when the tour ended, I talked to the tour guide, and I'm like, would it be possible to get a photo of me at like the table? And she's like, well, if there aren't too many people there, then sure. But what happened is that there were a bunch of people there, and I couldn't get the photo. But then she said, well, you're already on the lot. And after this tour is done, I'm just going to leave. So you're kind of able to do whatever you want. So I took that as a nice hint and waited a couple of minutes after the tour finished. And I walked back on to the soundstage that Community was filmed on. Donald Glover was sitting right there. And I just kind of quietly went up and introduced myself. I told him I'm a huge fan and started chatting with him about his work and stuff. And then Jillian Jacobs walks in, and she introduces herself to me, and I start talking to them. I mentioned that I just got off working on Weeds, and she says, oh, well, that's awesome, because one of my good friends happens to be a writer on Weeds. So I knew of her friend. We got to chatting about the industry and about working on Weeds and stuff. And then right before I left, I asked them for a quick photo, and they were really cool about it, just really cool people. Definitely worth going back and trying to see if I could talk to these people. This is the wrap party at Weeds. So at the end of the season, there's a nice big party for all the crew and cast. We happen to have it this year on the New York City Backlot, which is where, if you can tell, that's where Back to the Future was filmed. So that's where the clock tower was. And Hunter Parrish is down here. This is Steve, our DP. That's one of our, I think he did set dressing or costume or something like that. I don't remember. But I had a great time that night. And then after the wrap party, there was an after party at Hunter Parrish's house. If you've seen the season, you will probably recognize that big, like 12 by 12 poster. There's a whole little storyline that involves it, but that's just sitting in his living room. It's like 12 by 12. It's ridiculously huge, and it's just there. But that was really cool. Had a good time at his place. And that basically was the end of my season at Weeds. I literally, the next day, I finished packing up my car and drove back home. So just kind of start wrapping things up. I just want to give you guys a really quick list of things that I learned on set. And this is stuff that was either told to me by other people or that I observed and picked up on. But these are some of the more crucial points that I think people should know about working in the industry. So number 1, always be early. Number 2, be around and be aware. So you always kind of want to be on set and ready for what could happen next. Always respond with enthusiasm, because nobody likes a Debbie Downer. When you respond, I mean, obviously not over the top enthusiasm, but just kind of being happy to be there and being able to do your responsibilities, and not be Debbie Downer. Always wear comfy and supportive shoes. First thing I learned. The first day I did not wear the proper shoes, and I hated myself that night. It was just miserable. you need to develop a thick skin and really quickly in this industry because crap happens, and even though it's not personal, there's still a lot of crap to deal with. It rolls downhill. So you got to develop that thick skin if you intend to work in the industry. And lastly, work above the line. And so those who might not, most of you probably don't really know what that means. This comes from years ago when on the pay sheets, on the old pay sheets, and there would literally be a line, and those above the line were people with creative power, directors, producers, writers, that kind of deal. These people made the most money and they had the most creative power. Below the line is everybody else on crew, which actually coincidentally starts with director of photography and then works down. So camera department, electric department, and grip department. And so everybody's advice is work above the line because you get more money for less work, basically. And so now just 3 quick points to wrap up. If there's anything that I had to say about working in this industry and getting started, the 3 big points that I would say would be don't talk. Unless you know that you're in a situation where you can talk or somebody's asking you a question, it's best just to shut up. Because you also don't want to say something stupid, and then you get fired. While the job is very taxing, it can be very rewarding. I mean, like I said, that one day of production where I was working on my feet all day except for those 45 minutes, most intense work I had done all season, but also the most accomplished I'd ever felt after that day. It was a really, really great time. And then lastly, networking is everything. There are tons of people who are as good as you or better than you, but as long as you can do the job well and you know people who can get you the job, then you'll be okay. But, because just to emphasize that point, I mean, I wouldn't have this internship without networking. So it really is everything in this business. And I just wanted to, if there's any questions, I'd love to open up the floor to questions. Or not. Yes?
Looks like it's a man's world. Is it?
Yes, it is. There's definitely a lot more females breaking in, and there was actually a lot of discussion about that within our camera department in particular, because our camera department, except for Jay, was entirely male. And there was a situation on Parks and Recreation where Adam wasn't able to hop over onto Parks and Rec when they started, so they had to bring in another second assistant to replace him at least temporarily, and it happened to be a woman. And he was legitimately worried because, well, it sounds really sexist, but if you're an attractive female trying to work your way up in these departments, it helps. So there is a larger breakthrough of females, whether it's for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, I can't tell you, but it is definitely a male-oriented industry, but there are women definitely starting to break their way in and work their way up. Anybody else? Yes?
You said a little bit about unions and above the line and below the line and how your job may have affected your relationship with other people who were union people.
Well, the union, I guess I didn't really touch upon the union. Probably should have done that. The union, all I can really talk about is the camera union, because that's all that I learned about. The union is a really good thing if you want to work and make a decent, at least a guaranteed sum of money. Now, the issue is getting into the union, because to get into the union, at least for me, in the camera department, I have to work 100 days on a non-union production. And then I can call up the union, give them my information, and be like, hey, here's all the paperwork that says I worked 100 days, and then I can be inducted into the union. Of course, after I pay a union fee, which is, I think, starting somewhere around $3,000 or $5,000 or something like that.
Does your internship count for those 100 days?
No, because it was an unpaid internship, and I learned that about 2 weeks in, and I'm like, that really sucks. Yes.
Something too, like they have to be, like that has to be within a certain number of calendar years.
Yeah.
A certain number of those days have to be
Exactly.
within the last year.
Yeah, it's 100 days within 1 year. And so if you make 99 days, if you make 99 days in a year and then the year rolls over, technically you can't get in unless, your days start over. But if you know somebody who's willing to kind of work with you, who has some power or something like that. I heard a couple of stories where people did that. They were like 5 days away from the union, from getting into the union, but they were about to roll over and they weren't going to get any more work. And so they talked to a producer or somebody, and they, kind of gave them 5 more days, and then they just kind of paid them back later or something like that. It's a weird system. And to make it even weirder, the other way to get into the union is to work 30 union days. But you can't work on a union show if you're not in the union. So you can't get 30 union days if you're not in the union. It's a whole. I tried to figure that one out myself, and I still have no idea how that makes any sense to people. But yeah, because unions are everywhere in the industry. If you want to work anywhere, you're basically in a union. Anybody else? Yes.
So what is your current thinking? How is it going to help you get back to LA?
Well, I made as many friends as I could, because like I said, networking is everything. The current plan is to get back to LA shortly after I graduate. I don't know at what time exactly. Money is kind of a big factor at this point, because I need to be able to support myself while I'm out there. But the current plan is to get back out there and see what I can find. The biggest issue for me is the fact that everybody who I made friends with are all union members. So for them to, and they all pretty much have stable union jobs throughout the year. So for me to come in as a non-union and have to work my way up, I know it's going to be difficult, and it's probably going to take me a couple of years. But I'm hoping that maybe somehow in a way, those people will know somebody who has non-union work or something like that, and I can get my days that way. But yeah, currently the plan is to move back to LA as soon as possible, particularly financially possible.
And with the young people that you met there, is this the typical strategy? Is there any other way to do it?
There is one way to do it, which is actually the George and Adam, the two guys who were in the internship positions that I was in previously. That is the other way to do it, and that is they went through a program called Hollywood CPR, I believe. I forget what the CPR stands for, but it's a program. It's like I think it's a 1-year program or something like that. And then at the end of the program, they give you 2 internships. So it's basically the same situation that I had, where they're unpaid internships, but somehow somebody higher up in the program gets those days to be union days. So when you go through this program and then you complete your 2 internships, you automatically get your union card. So I mean, that's the other way to do it. But as far as going in and trying to work your way up, everybody has to do the same thing. You just got to go out there and try and find work and get another job to support yourself while you're trying to get your days. And you do a lot of cheap work, you do a lot of free work. You take whatever comes to you. So it's going to be it's probably going to be a struggle. Can't see it not being a struggle.
Did you meet anyone or have any discussions with about going to a film school? Would that have helped you in any way that
Well, it'll.
the liberal arts school did or didn't?
George had gone to one of the film schools out there in LA, but he wasn't terribly. I mean, you learn a lot, obviously, but the thing is that, and they all tell you this, is that you learn more by doing it. You learn more by being on set. It's definitely the best learning experience. So, while he did go to a film school, he wasn't all adamant about you should do this and you should go to a film school and that'll really help you out. I mean, it's not going to hurt, obviously, but it's also not really any kind of a particular career maker, or it's not going to get you into the union. It's not going to really get you work. There's no guarantee there. It's just kind of a nice thing that you can also do to expand your knowledge and your experience. But just trying to get work is really the best thing that you can do. Yes.
So given your current experience, what's your ultimate end goal, and how long do you think it would take you on average to get to that point?
The ultimate end goal currently stands to be a director of photography. I want to work my way up camera as fast as possible. I want to work through, being a second AC and being a first AC as fast as possible. I love camera operating, so I'm okay with, being a camera operator for a while. But DP is definitely the end goal. As far as time, I mean, I have personal goals. As to how realistic they are, I have no idea. My personal goals is to be operating within 5 years and DPing within 10. Who knows? A lot of that comes with how much you learn, and you know, how lucky you are, who you know, and what kind of jobs you can get. So, who knows? Anybody else? Nope. Okay. Cool. Thanks for coming.